Welcome to Saturday's Warrior. I'm Trevor, and this is Adam, and this is the channel where we talk all things BYU and Big 12, some conference realignment. And today we are talking the BYU Baylor game, looking back at Week 5, and also going to look forward a little bit to Week 6 and make our picks. And so, Adam, we had quite a nail biter of a game this week against Baylor, and I want to get into that. But first, before we do anything else, we got to cover the important things. Those Baylor uniform, that color combo was atrocious. They deserved to lose that game.
Hideous. I totally agree. I saw the announcement they were busting out a new uni combination, and I look at it and oh man, I don't love green and yellow at all.
Oh, really?
Green and gold, maybe gold accents can look really sharp, but when you really highlight the yellow with the green accents or a green helmet, I don't go for it at all. So I think green and yellow is already a difficult color combination. The Oakland A's have made it kind of classic. They've done some good things with it, but I think it's tough. If you make it more gold and make that golden accent color, you can get away with it. But outside of that, I struggle with green and gold and green and yellow to begin with, and Baylor was just garish out there.
Yeah, well, I like the color combination, but definitely you need I think yellow's better, I agree, as the accent. But you also have the Packers, but both the A's and the Packers have white in there as well. And
That's true.
Baylor did not. And so it really is when it's really heavy on the gold. But yeah, I like the gold helmet, gold jersey, and then yellow pants. I think that still really works. I think they've got a lot of great color combinations that do work. It's just this was just
I think Baylor has a great uniform lineup. I wish they'd go back to those gold chrome helmets with the gold chrome face mask. They had some cool looks with that, but this one certainly didn't do it for me.
So now that we've got that out of the way, also their stadium seemed to be not so full, which I guess makes sense. They haven't been great, but I didn't get a lot of I didn't notice a lot of good looks. But it seemed like BYU had a very good turnout there.
You could hear him chanting at some parts during the game, and I mean a lot of BYU fans in Texas. We typically show out well for those Baylor games, but to me, those Baylor fans have been notorious. If their team's good, they will pack that stadium. But the moments they start to lose, there's plenty of other stuff to do in Waco, man. You got to go check out Magnolia Farms and Chris and Joanna and all that stuff, I guess, because I don't know what it is in Waco, but if they lose a couple games, that stadium is half filled, 3/4 filled, maybe, and I just you'd think that it'd be more like Nebraska, where there's not known for a ton, but known for college football, and so pack that stadium. But yeah, once they start to lose, I don't see a lot of Baylor fans at the games over the years. It reminded me a little bit of when Utah traveled there last year, and it didn't seem like a huge crowd. Baylor had lost 1 or 2 to start the season, and fans just weren't showing up.
Yeah, which is too bad. And maybe it was just they just didn't want to have to wear the yellow shirts because they felt like the uniforms were ugly.
That's true. That's true.
So, okay, so getting into the game now. So I will say I hate day games because I was unable to watch this game live and actually had, as to my best efforts, I had so many people text me out of the blue that don't normally text me during games. It was eventually spoiled for me before I had a chance to watch it. But this was a nail biter of a game, which is also why we didn't do our live reaction afterwards. So anybody that was looking for that, sorry, we will try and do better with these as games go on. But the Arizona game was just announced that is going to be at 4 p.m. Eastern time. So That is another one that I'll be able to watch, but I'll most likely have a lot of interruptions during. So,
day games are tough, especially because we're so accustomed to night games after independence. It seemed like all of them were night games, or almost all of them, unless we were playing an FCS school. So, plenty of night games in independence, and now I like that there's more day games. I like that my kids can watch it with me, and my older kids. I got a couple of my kids to watch this one with me, which I hadn't always been able to do. So that was pretty fun. Good for them to see a victory. But the day games can be tough for that. You got family obligations that come first, and you're trying to meld football and family. And my family's not quite there yet. We're close. We know the fight song. We wear the colors. I just got to understand the game a little bit more.
Good. Start indoctrinating them while they're young. So
That's right.
Maybe if my dad, who's a Ute, had done more of that, maybe. No, I was locked in as a Cougar from pretty young age, as far as back as I can remember. That was my brother's influence. No, so yeah, so but it was a nail biter of a game. So walk me through, since I kind of didn't get to experience that, you know, the roller coaster of emotions that you guys had. Walk me through the game and how it felt as you experienced it.
Well, it was euphoria in the first quarter. My texts in the first quarter were just, wow, can you believe this? Everything's working. I mean, everything. Defense, offense, special teams, clicking, and offense was gouging. I mean, it didn't matter the run game, pass game, the play calling, the creativity. I mean, you look at the second half of the Kansas State game and the first half of the Baylor game. That's 4 quarters of really good offense, great running offense. And it was fun to watch, but you saw us lose steam a little bit in the second half. To me, I thought it was when Connor Pay went out of the game. Um, I found out today that it was actually during the second drive that he went out of the game. So BYU sustained some good drives, had a good rushing offense without him, which I think is notable. I also found out that Makasini is our third string center.
Yeah.
Uh, it was Jake Eichhorn who was supposed to be second string center. He was injured too. So you're on your third string center putting that together. And the second half was a drag because you just saw a very determined, very spirited Baylor team. Our offense is really struggling to get anything going on the ground. Drops, uncharacteristic drops by the wide receivers that were really drive killers. A couple turnovers there. So, yeah, it felt like we were going to win the game. It felt like our defense was going to pull it out, but our pass defense was struggling a little bit. And I was reading some analysis today that in the second half, Baylor stacked the box, 7 or 8 guys in the box, and just said, "You're not going to run it on us. And figure out the rest, but you're not going to run it." And that really shifted the game. And I don't know that we had a great answer after that. So some chess playing, some X's and O's. Dave Aranda is one of the best. And then our secondary kind of got exposed a little bit against a quarterback that could throw it. And we'll see how that plays out against Arizona this next week. So it was a roller coaster of emotions. Crew Wakely got that interception, and man, that was that was relief. Great play on the ball to win the game, but roller coaster to say the least.
Well, it wasn't as suspenseful for me as I watched it, but yeah, I did go through, and a lot of the same things stood out. I don't think in real time, especially because I was skipping over a lot of the commentary and stuff, so I probably missed, some of the, like Connor Pay. I didn't realize he was out for most of the time I was watching it. But yeah, there were some things that I noticed from Baylor. You'd mentioned them stacking the box. I noticed, I think they're just good defense. Like I noticed, I can't remember which half it was in. I feel like maybe it was the second quarter, but the mix of looks that they gave, there were, I think, I think it was 4 consecutive plays that I saw them rush 3, then 4, then 5, and then 4 again. But the guy, it was I think a safety that came up or something. So they're mixing up all the pressures and everything. And so, and that was to be expected. I did think it was an interesting strategy that they thought, no, we're going to make BYU beat us on the ground while they're playing their third, fourth string, whatever, running backs. And, but it seemed to work. And ultimately the score was not, well, I mean, it was higher, but the fact that it was close was not that big of a surprise. It was really how they got there. But like you mentioned, losing Connor Pay when you're already playing running backs, when you're deep in your running back depth chart, and then you lose your starting center, who's also who's there calling out the protections and everything and what they're seeing. I also noticed the snaps were coming in a bit lower. And that was when I first started questioning. I was like, what's going on? When I noticed a couple in a row, and didn't realize it wasn't Connor Pay in there. But yeah, so I'm not surprised that Baylor did really well. I don't think anyone should be. I thought this was going to be more of a lower scoring game. So the fact that BYU, even outside of that interception, still had longer sustained drives and scored early in the game. And then you add that interception on there on top of it. It really did feel like you're starting right where Kansas State or where BYU left off against Kansas State, where just nothing, we couldn't do any wrong. But yeah, just I think the run game being that debilitated really impacted the rest of the game. And now a lot of the criticism is a lot of fans are saying that BYU went too conservative in their play calling in the second half. What do you make of that?
No, I don't think so. I point more to the drops of the wide receivers and the inability to get any push on the run game. I didn't necessarily feel like it was conservative. I think BYU has a reputation for taking their foot off the gas because
Yeah.
really that's what the stats say. I mean, in the Satake era, we struggle putting teams away. We always have. And so, maybe it is conservatism, maybe it's a mindset. I don't know what it is. It's hard to say. So I didn't see us necessarily as conservative. I just saw a lack of offensive line presence like we had in the first half, and it affected every aspect of our offense. You add on top of that the drops by the wide receivers, and it's just things just can't click. And so I think that was tough. Props to the offense for what they did in the first half. They gave us a big enough lead to see us through. That was their best half of football that we've had all year, and so there's progress happening. But it was hard to put your finger on. I do think we kind of take our foot off the gas a little bit. At the beginning of the second half, but then there's some urgency there as they see Baylor mounting a comeback, and I think they stayed aggressive. They just weren't able to execute. There wasn't enough, whether it was blitz recognition or just overall push by the offensive line, inability to establish a run game. I don't know what it was, but we certainly looked like we were running out of steam and we're at a loss for how to counter that defense.
Yeah, I agree that it wasn't. I don't know if it was too conservative. There were a few plays. There's a couple plays where I felt like they made too conservative of a call, but overall it wasn't. I mean, we had that fake punt, which was incredibly
was.
and it was just carried out to perfection. That was amazing.
That was awesome. Yeah, that really was. And that's the thing. I don't feel like I don't know what the cause is for our inability to put teams away because I feel like the team recognizes they need to put their foot on the gas. And you got, for example, the fake punt, and you have some big plays every once in a while, but we are not able to sustain these 21, 24-point leads that we'll build sometimes on teams. And I feel like whenever we build that early on, it's going to be a nail biter. The other team's going to find a way to claw back. And some of that's football. You look at Alabama, Georgia this week, and exact same thing. And it's just it's sports psychology. It's it's that mentality of a desperate team that needs to win. They know they need to win this game. They prepared all week for it, and they're not going to take this laying down, and they're going to fight back somehow. And so there's an element of sports psychology to it, but the consistency that BYU has had and that inability to put teams away like they did against Kansas State last week, where they did do it, has been consistent throughout the Satake era. And I don't know exactly what it is.
Yeah, there definitely has been some of that. But looking at this game in and of itself, I don't think it was terribly called like super aggressively. I even saw someone break down the pass and throw attempts, comparing first half or second half, but also just between how many plays were called were pass versus run. And it was a pretty even split. So it didn't feel like they were just trying to run it, especially when you weren't having any success, which was unfortunate to say the least, how we just could not get that run game going. But in terms of our running backs, I'm kind of curious because it looks like this week, when we should say actually, this bye week couldn't have come at a better time.
Right. It's perfect.
You really need it. I'm a big fan of this. I know it's only because of the way the calendar fell that we've got the 2 bye weeks this year, but I think we should find a way to implement 2 bye weeks every year, whether it's starting a week earlier. I know they don't love doing that because a lot of schools haven't started yet, and so you don't get all the students there. But if you're just playing cupcakes in week 1 anyway, then I don't know. You get that game out of the way, whatever, and build in, especially with the playoff, because that's adding a lot more. You're not just having one more bowl game. You've got a conference championship. You've got potentially multiple rounds of bowl games. And I know there's some rest built in between all that, but having 2 bye weeks, I think, would be super. So this is, I think, really good for BYU, obviously, with some injuries. I also saw that Connor Pay, there were no season-ending injuries from this last week because there was a lot of injuries Connor Pay is not expected to be back for Arizona, but that we should have all of our running backs back.
Yeah.
So looking at that, I'm kind of curious in terms of our running back depth chart, what you think it should look like at this point. Because for me, I mean, everyone knows LJ Martin is RB1, but after that, how would you rank those guys?
I think you'd put I hate the or symbol on a depth chart, but I'd stick that between Moa and Nawahine. I think they've earned it. I didn't see enough out of Ropati in those first couple games that he did play to say, yeah, he's the number two guy. Whereas Moa and Nawahine had some really tough running against some good defenses, and so I think they've earned that chance to take number two reps. Um, I'd really like us to lean in a little bit more to LJ Martin, uh, because it felt like in those first couple games he was kind of splitting reps and he wasn't going to be the workhorse back. And you want him healthy for the Big 12 season. Well, we're in the Big 12 season, so and maybe you pick and choose. Maybe it's the Utah game where you kind of rely on him more heavily. But I feel like running backs kind of get into a rhythm, and especially when you get a guy who's like that, who's taking 20 carries a game, we've got him. And our offense needs that reliability. They need that consistency. We've got a shot at the Big 12 title, or at least to make a run at it regular season. And I just feel like you put your chips on the table. Give it to LJ Martin. You got depth behind him, but let's use that depth if he does get injured again. Let's make him the feature back. And that's what I'd like to see out of the running backs, is it's been by committee when you've got this superstar sitting back there. And again, I think they were conservative with him pre-conference play, which was smart. Still got injured. He's back from the injury. I'm not saying game one you give him 25 carries, but I'd like to see him build up to that over the next couple games to be your feature back.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. I mean, and I'm guessing that was just because they were trying to get some more reps on some other guys and stuff, and then he got injured. And so it's hard to say with that game one to know what their game plan is going forward. And now that he's coming back from injury, they might still have him split reps. I mean, that's something they've been doing on offense and defense. And some criticism I've heard is just, they're playing too many guys. Really let some guys get out there. You've had a chance to kind of let guys get reps, develop the talent. Now you should know who your guys are and really run with them. But yeah, I'm with you. Let LJ Martin carry the load. But for me, it's LJ Martin, and then Sione Moa, and then the or for me would be Nawahine or Haunga, and then, I mean, then last I would put Hinkley Rapati. I don't know how he ended up as the second on the depth chart to start the season, because for me he's last. But then I know Miles Davis is in there, but I still use Miles Davis in the role you have him, but don't use him as that between the tackles.
I think they've been really smart with Miles Davis. I really wanted to see him be the number 2 or number 3 back and get the lion's share of the carries when Martin went down, when Ropati went down. I wanted to see him in that role, and it just isn't working out. But I love how they incorporate him, because you think when number 4 is on the field, the defense is going to know he's running the wheel route. He's going to get a pitch. He's going to run the fly sweep. He's going to run something outside of the tackles, and yet it's still effective what they're doing with him. He's enough of an off-speed back where either he doesn't get enough carries, so the defense isn't preparing for him, or what it is. But it seems like when he touches the ball, he's super effective because of the way they're using him. And so I like that. I hope they keep doing that. He's a great off-speed back because he's so fast, and really, really good in space. So I hope he continues to get some touches like that, and he can do it, just be the situational back, because he's fun to watch.
Yeah, so I would like to see him keep getting more touches. I mean, he did have that receiving touchdown this week, so but I want to see him have a chance to use that speed, because I mean, he has some plays that are just electric. But yeah, so I don't know how that would. To me, I almost view that different positionally from the other running back, so that's why I wouldn't necessarily have him in that list. But let's see here. I was just looking at any other. I was trying to find some of the other notable.
Well, I think we should probably mention the secondary and the struggles there against Robertson, who made great throws, and the wide receivers made catches that were out of their mind. I mean, really, that was spirited football by Baylor, and I think caused by us having such a large lead. But I was texting someone before the game that our offense really hasn't seen a great passing quarterback yet. Or excuse me, our defense hasn't seen a great passing quarterback prior to the Baylor game. Stone was probably the best passing quarterback we faced, and we hit him so fast he never got a chance to get a legitimate throw off. And then Jennings came in for SMU, and he was fast and an effective passer, but not pinpoint precision like we're going to see against Fafita this week in Arizona and some of the others we may face this year. So I don't know that we've faced that quarterback like Robertson that's able to be super accurate in space, and it really exposed us a little bit. And so I think we got a great secondary. I think there were obviously some miscommunications back there that we needed to clean up. And some of our freshmen really got exposed. Prasis and Alexander and some of the others who've been great thus far, but just it's a learning curve for them. But I worry a little bit. I worry against Arizona that they've got a great quarterback who's extremely accurate, and we just haven't really faced that yet too often. And Robertson sure looked good against us.
Yeah, we made him. I think we allowed him to look really good. And I wonder how much of that was schematically if we're really trying to contain the run, because we shut them down. We shut the run game down. And so
Completely.
does that mean we were willing to take a chance? We're going to say he's going to have to beat us over the top, and that he did. And so, maybe some of that schematics, but even the tackling in this game just did not look great. Like there were a lot of missed tackles or guys that seemed like they just couldn't close in with the same kind of speed. We just looked out of sorts. They really were attacking not Mo Bamba. That's a NBA player.
Maury Bamba.
Maury Bamba, yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, they did. They
I
went after
didn't
him.
realize they had like the same name. Okay. Yeah. They were really attacking him. And I know he's been out, and so maybe he's a little rusty. He was in at the K-State game. But man, I don't know if that was by their design, but they were really going after him, and it seemed to be effective.
Hans Olsen during the game was pointing out schematically where we were playing a lot of zone, and Robertson just sat back and picked apart the zone. And then we switched towards the end of the game when we really had some defensive stands. We switched to press man coverage and really stood up and just said, our corners are good enough to beat your wide receivers. And when that happens, that's when we finally started to slow that offensive explosion that brought them back into the game. And what won the game for us was that ability to play press man coverage, which is really cool because we haven't had that ability until the last couple of years with Guilford coming in and really training up the secondary to be able to play that. But so it seemed like a scheme, at least from Hans Olsen's perspective throughout the game, where he kept commenting on that when we played press man coverage, we could shut down their passing game. But the zone was just not effective.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting against Arizona. We'll get more into this next week, but yeah, we run into that issue because you have a great passer, which we've just shown. Okay, if Robertson, who looks by all accounts to be a very good quarterback, but he didn't even start the season as the starting quarterback for Baylor, then going up against someone of Noah Fafita's talent at throwing, but then we've also really struggled against mobile quarterbacks, and he's certainly mobile. And so now when we go into that, we're going to have to figure out some sort of way to scheme against that and contain him while also not allowing the passing game to get off. So that'll be interesting to see what they do. One of the things you were mentioning is just it's tough to win games overall, and a win is a win. And as you go through game, week after week after week, you're going to have some surprises, and some people might look at Baylor and think, okay, this isn't that impressive a win. We should have won by more. It's just Baylor. I think this is a pretty good Baylor team. As you mentioned, their back was against the wall. They came out, they made changes at halftime that really impacted our team. Now, some injuries did too. And credit to them, their scheme worked. We had to, as you just mentioned, we had to make some changes to our scheme as well to help us pull out that victory. But so I think, again, well, you look at last year, Alabama had some games where they struggled against South Florida, against Arkansas, against, some other teams that, you wouldn't consider to be on the same level as Alabama, but those good teams find a way to win. And so BYU did that, starting with an early lead helped, but that's, all that's part of it. And so, and also looking at Baylor, and I think changing their quarterback. If you look at since they made that switch, like they've had a lot of success. They've been scoring more. We know they have a lockdown defense. We saw what they did against Colorado. By all accounts, they let that game slip away. And Colorado has a couple of really unique talents, and they were able to come back and kind of pull out a miraculous win over Baylor in overtime. So if you look at that, I mean, Baylor had a really good game against Colorado, who just went into the bounce house and embarrassed UCF. And so for me, I'm just thinking, actually, this Baylor team's pretty good. And the fact that we were able to put up as many points as we did on Baylor, and then, the defense did struggle some, which is a surprise because we've let, they've scored, way more on us. That I think probably doubled, than any other points that we've allowed in any other game this season. So I think the credit really goes to Baylor in this, but then also BYU to be able to find a way to win and do some different things to do that. So I think it was a good, hard fought game. And yes, there were a couple interceptions. One of those, man, how crazy is it that you have one of those batted up, flies up in the air, and then caught right there by a lineman by both teams in the same game. It's just crazy. You don't see those, but maybe that was ill-advised, but he did have the one interception that was just a really bad throw. It was ill-advised and a bad throw.
Well, so he was counting on Keelan Marion coming back to the ball, and Keelan Marion slipped.
Even so, then, it still seemed.
So I'm not saying it's a great decision, especially because he had the first down open. He could have ran for the first down. And so he had a good 12, 13 yards he could have picked up with his feet. And that's probably where you want him to go there. I didn't hate it. I didn't hate the decision. I think Marion's made catches like that before. But you're throwing across your body, when you run to the right, it's one of those throws you probably don't want to make. And you see that again, we've talked about the gunslinger mentality that comes out there. I don't hate that interception as much as some of the other kind of egregious decisions like SMU interceptions that really got to me. That one you don't love, but people are saying we're not being aggressive enough in the second half, and you got Retzlaff going down there really trying to punch the ball deep with a throw like that. That's the kind of stuff where I feel like you're going to get that. You don't get the 44-yard bomb to Lassiter without the occasional throw like that to Marion. And so you don't like to see it, but I don't know. It doesn't get me riled up.
Yeah. You can live with it when they're not like crazy bad decisions, and you know that he's going to try to make those plays. That's kind of just in his nature. But I don't love the decision. I get it, and it's fine. But what I think is interesting is even with multiple interceptions and a tight game against a team that people feel like, oh, we should have beat by more, and we had this huge lead. I haven't heard anything about people calling for Retzlaff to be benched. And so It's nice to hear that narrative has changed. So I think that K-State game did a lot. It really lengthened his leash, at least from the fans' perspective. I don't know how long or short it was from the coaching staff prior, but at least from the outside, it seems like fans have a lot more patience with it because he has made a lot of those other plays, as you mentioned. And so I just think it's interesting to see how much that mindset and that perspective has changed on him. And so it seems people are really behind him and buying into what he's doing. And I've even heard people, I should have saved some and pulled them up, but talking about the stats for like Ty Detmer and the amount of interceptions he threw, because he was slinging it all the time. Yeah. And it's, if you got a gunslinger, that those interceptions are going to happen, and it just kind of comes with the territory. So
go ahead.
No.
It helps that it came on the heels of that first half. That first half was incredible. I mean, lights out. I don't know that he threw one errant pass. There were a couple drops. And I think he threw one away. That was a good decision. And besides that, he was like 15 for 18. I mean, just incredible on that first half. And you see the potential there. But I also think we're seeing the growth. And remember that debate early on in the season was, hey, look, he's played 6 games. It is what it is. You got what you got. Or, no, look, he hasn't even played double-digit, D1 games. Let's give the guy some time to grow. He's had the toughest slate in his first 10 games of any BYU QB ever. the level of competition is way beyond what other BYU QBs have had to face. So let's give him some time and we'll see the growth. And it seems, it's still a small sample size, but from the SMU game to now, there's some growth there. And it helps when there's a run game, when he doesn't have to put it all on his shoulders and do it himself. And so there's some other variables there, but I agree. I think Cougar faithful are saying, all right, this is our guy. We're going to ride with him, and he's got some serious talent, and you feel like he's reining in the tendency to on the really bad decisions. The picks are going to be there, but we're not getting I'm getting sacked and throwing the ball errantly, wildly in the air. So the progress is there.
Yeah, absolutely. And although, I mean, one thing is it does feel like there was some slippage in the progress of the team overall from what we saw against K-State. But again, I think K-State was catching lightning in a bottle. And so really we should look at, was their progress from the game prior, which was
the Wyoming game.
Yeah. And which there certainly was.
Really, you alluded to this, but it's Big 12 play. And you're going to have games like this. And to me, there's more value in these wins, like SMU and Baylor, than there are in K-State and Wyoming, because you're seeing the things that you can improve. And this team has proven that they are going to get better each week. And they're really going to harp on those things they need to change and the ways they need to evolve. And so there's a lot of value in going into someone else's house and going through a hard-fought game and delivering some clutch performances at the end of the game and coming away with a victory. There's a lot of value in that, and you're going to see that in conference play. We're not going to catch that lightning in a bottle every time. We're going to play some teams that are supposed to be bad and are going to give us their best stuff and give us some tough games, and that's the nature of a conference like this.
Yeah, and this is what we wanted, right? And you're right. You mentioned this was a first because out of the 4 games that these two teams have played, the home team has always won. And now BYU finally ended that. We got our first road Big 12 win. We won in a day game and a morning game, however you look at it. So it's just there's a lot of obstacles or trends or whatever that BYU is able to overcome in this game and get a solid win behind them. I mean, winning on the road's not easy. Winning in the Big 12's not easy. We all talk about the depth. So I think, and for the most part, I've seen a lot of positivity from people, and I think we should be positive about this and pretty happy to have a bye week right now to get healthy. Speaking of the bye week, so now this kind of gives us a chance to look forward to the rest of the season. And this is the updated FPI number. So I was glad I found this because I'd started doing this, but I'd only been doing it periodically. And so there's a big chunk of early games where I didn't have it. And so now what I like is you can kind of see how it's changed over the course of the season. Each of these games and the likelihood, and you can see where we were or the amount of change there's been. And it's just, it's really impressive. And that now the overall they have us at 9.1 wins. So we should be expected to only lose 3 more games this season. And now it's still amazing to me that UCF is still a lower likelihood of winning than Utah. But when we're set up and a lot of these, so not only I think coming into this season in terms of expectations for the team, because it really does feel like there was a time, I really felt strongly that BYU was going to get to 5 wins. I thought it might take until Houston to do so, but I didn't think we would get below that. And so I probably should have put money on it. But the fact that we're already there after 5 games, when we were talking about our projections for the year, we had said, we definitely have to at least be 3-2 going into that first bye. It would be awesome if we could be 4-1. We didn't really even talk about being 5-0.
You'd be laughed out of the building for saying we'd be 5-0. Anybody at this point, those first 5 games, you're going to say we're going to beat SMU and Kansas State and Baylor. Even Wyoming looked a little shaky. That was going to be a really tough road test.
Based on last year.
Right? Yeah. And so the fact that we're 5-0, I don't care how we got there.
It's hard to do.
It is really tough to do. I mean, that's something you celebrate. And the season's not over. And it's not. We're certainly not a playoff or bust team. If we end up with 8 or 9 wins, that's awesome. That's still awesome. And I know that would be really tough for Cougar Nation to take. If we only end up at 8 wins from this point, we only win 3 more. That would be tough because we should win more than that. But boy, who knows how it goes with injuries, other teams upping their game. We're not even halfway through the season yet, so there's a lot of football left to be played. But it's pretty cool up to this point to be 5-0.
Yeah, only getting 3 out of 7 would seem harsh, which is crazy because at the beginning of the year, we said, I would be ecstatic just hitting 6 wins. We just want to get a bowl game with this tough schedule. That's crazy. And I even had the voice of the day on BYUSN one time, and they said, okay, would you be okay if we got like whatever bowl game or whatever, if that's, where we're projected? And I just posted that meme of Connor Mance, doing his thing with his face and just saying, me, if we make literally any bowl game. And I believe that, like, just making a bowl game in our second year in the Big 12 is a huge accomplishment. But now obviously our I think expectations of this team have shifted drastically, as they should, because not only has BYU shown that they're better than we thought that they would be coming in, at least most of us, right? But that other teams have shown their cracks. I mean, we have teams on here the Arizona game looked a lot better back when we assumed it was going to be a night game. And, they're coming off of that embarrassing loss to K-State. Now, after last week, we're, going back to reality, thinking, okay, this is going to be a tough one, even though it's at home. Oklahoma State has looked certainly less than what we thought they would be. UCF just got embarrassed at home. That's still going to be a tough one. But Utah, who knows what their QB situation will be. Kansas. I mean, Kansas looks like that'll be easier than Arizona State.
Yeah, I know. And this is how it is every year, right? The preseason projections go out the window. You got teams who had a bad year last year that come in super motivated. That's where I would put us. You got teams last year that rode sky high and are doing great and maybe didn't put in as much on the offseason. Maybe that's Oklahoma State. I don't know what's going on with them, but it evolves and it shifts so much. Every year is its own product. And we put so much year to year on what happened last year because you're bringing back, 80% of your starters or whatever it is and saying, oh, well, we kind of know where they're going to perform. And this year is wild to me as a BYU fan. I don't remember a year where we turned it around so much and had such a drastic step forward like this. And you hope for that as a fan, but it usually doesn't happen. So it's fun to see the cast of the Big 12. Super fun conference to be in. Because of the parity and because of the fluctuation and who's good week to week. And you just feel like all of our games are winnable from here on out, but almost all of them are losable too. Any of those teams could step up and just catch us on a bad week or have something to counter what we've put forward on tape so far. And, you get an unexpected injury that really alters the course of the game. And so you certainly don't bank on tons of victories from here on out, but it's fun to look optimistically at the schedule now.
Yeah, and I mean, I still wish people wouldn't have us, making in their projections for the playoff and getting, being one of the 4 teams with a bye and everything. But, BYU certainly, I would say at this point, definitely a contender in the Big 12. Now, I'm not saying that makes us a favorite. I'm not saying BYU will win, but BYU is in it, and we're positioned because we've won 2 games. I think only BYU and Colorado have won 2 in-conference games, but Colorado has a loss, out of conference loss, and so I mean BYU certainly deserves to be at number 1 in the conference right now, and we are, and so I think we enjoy that and understand that there's a tough road ahead. That even the bad teams, you look at Houston, and they ended up getting beat pretty bad by Iowa State, but that first half was close, and they stayed close with Oklahoma. They've been in these games, so even the teams that are at the bottom are still competitive teams. That there's really no week off. So I love it. It's awesome. So speaking of which, let's talk about some of these matchups that we've had. So let's first look at our picks for this last week. So we only had one pick that was different, and I won it, which means I'm closing in on you. I'm only down by 1 right now.
That was so close. Oklahoma State. I mean, looking back, that still feels like the smart pick there. You really feel like they were going to pull that out there.
Yeah, no, I just trusted Kansas State a little bit more, and I felt like they would have a bounce back week. Like they had a pretty bad taste in their mouth, and that was a game that, a few bounces go a little bit differently. It felt like they probably felt like they could have been the game could have been closer and they could have still been in it. But
well, and if you're going to ask me any of the teams not named BYU that I really think will be in Arlington, it's Kansas State. I think they have the talent. I think they proved that they're a team that's going to learn from their mistakes, and their schedule the rest of the year favors that. I think they can do it. We'll see. They got to go into Colorado here and make some noise and some other places, but it's a long season still. But they looked really good on Saturday.
Avery Johnson, yeah, I mean he was back. It's like, oh wait a second, he can throw the ball. So it makes what BYU did feel all that much more rewarding. I still, you put these two together. Let's say BYU and Kansas State are playing again on a neutral field. I still think, that's going to be a tough fought game. I wouldn't go into that thinking, oh, we trounced them last time. Absolutely, we're going to trounce them again. It would be a whole new game, and it would be interesting to see how, the adjustments both teams make. We already mentioned a few of these. So TCU, I mean, over Kansas. I mean, those two teams that are really struggling. State we mentioned. Oh, Texas Tech and Cincinnati. That was a good one. Cincy. I mean, Texas Tech. I think people are thinking, okay, starting to buy stock in them. Like, okay, I think we know who Texas Tech is now. I think they figured some things out. But Cincy, I think has also shown that they're a pretty good team. Like they're maybe still another year away, but they're not an easy out.
Yeah, they're going to be scary in the next 2 or 3 years. They are, because they've got a lot of talent there. It's about gelling, bringing it together so they can compete week in and week out. That's a team I have my eye on in the second half of the season. They could make a strong surge because they're clearly talented on offense, struggling on defense. They've lost some really close games, but I mean, Pitt and Texas Tech both could have gone the other way, and you'd be singing a totally different tune about Cincinnati right now. And so they've been really close. It feels like they're a year away, but that's a good football team.
And so I kind of had to maybe start thinking about taking back some of what I've said about Satterfield in the past, but it just really didn't seem like they were getting it. And that was off of, first year in the league, losing a lot of talent. You can't fault them too much for that. And I don't think anyone was. So see what they've done in year two has been impressive. And then Arizona shocked everybody. So that leads us into next week. We'll talk about that a little bit more next week when we get into it. We start looking at the matchup more closely. But like we said, that game is all of a sudden starting to feel a little bit less. In fact, I'm surprised that they have what is it? The FPI has BYU at 66.5% in that game, and that feels a bit high because I think Arizona's going to be a tough matchup for BYU.
I think that entire game rests on how our defense responds. They've been lights out all year. We got exposed a little bit of Baylor. Do we learn? Do we progress? If our defense brings their A game, I like our chances beyond 66%. But if we're really getting picked apart by good, accurate quarterbacks, it's anybody's game.
Yeah, but if let's say we're healthier and we give Jay Hill 2 weeks to scheme and 2 weeks to plan, and these guys to get into that, prepared for Arizona, I do feel good about that. And then getting our depth back at running back makes me feel good about the offense that, hopefully we can add that dimension to the game. So we'll see how things progress there. But all right. So real quick, here's where we stand.
Close. It's tight.
So it's
tight. A couple victories here this next week.
I'm actually competitive this year. So
I felt more comfortable last year. Let's get back to that.
Yeah, well, we might this week because looking at my picks. So going through this, I think both of us, TCU over Houston, shouldn't be a surprise. OSU at home, we'll see if they're able to have a bounce back week. I think this should be a good game.
I think so, and I'm just not sold on West Virginia yet. I don't think Oklahoma State is great this year, and is evidenced by the fact that Ollie Gordon can't get going. You got the greatest running back in the country, and he can't. Well, maybe Boise State's guy now. I mean, he's playing lights out. But Ollie Gordon's amazing, and there's no run game there. And so I think there is something broken right now in Oklahoma State in their offensive scheme. But I'm not sold on West Virginia as a team that can go into enemy territory and get a victory against a desperate Oklahoma State team.
Yeah, I kind of felt the same. I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if West Virginia wins this game. I actually sat on this one and thought about it for a while, but ultimately kind of came out the same there. So this is where things get interesting. I'm kind of rolling the dice on this one, picking Baylor over Iowa State.
That is rolling the dice. You like Baylor.
Well, I just think, people look at their record and they look at what they did last year and think, oh, Baylor's not very good. And I think Baylor they've shown more than what their record would indicate. And we mentioned they are desperate. They they got close. They lost 2 close games, a game that they let slip away, and then another one that they clawed back in and just didn't have enough. So I think that this team, again, is going to really want it. Now, Iowa State, everyone is really high on right now. I just don't know if we've seen that much from them. Like, aside from like a really long field goal to win against Iowa, I mean, what have they done this year? And I'm not even convinced by Iowa. So
Yeah, and Iowa State hasn't had to do much, right? They just haven't had the competition. So I think you make a great point. They only beat Houston 20-0. Maybe you argue they should have won by more there. I worry about Baylor's psyche at this point. 2 back-to-back heartbreaks. You're going to start to lose some of your team. Not all your team. You got a good team. You got good leaders on that team, but you're going to start to lose some players mentally. And that's where, if this game was played last week after the Colorado game, I'd see a little bit more an angle for them to win. But on the road, I just don't know if mentally they have it after those back-to-back heart-crushing losses.
you make a valid point, which is the reason why I was a little nervous to make this pick. But I stick with it. I'm going with Baylor on this
I
one.
like it. I like it. Be bold.
Yeah, I haven't seen, like, Iowa State hasn't been super explosive. I think Baylor, since the QB switch, has shown that their offense can move the ball, and we know
Certainly.
that their defense is solid. So I like what they're doing overall. And maybe Iowa State comes out and proves, hey, we're as good as everyone thought. We're worth the hype, and maybe I eat my words. But UCF of Florida. So we both came. I wasn't sure how you're going to go on this one. We both went with UCF.
I went back and forth a little bit, but I've watched the Billy Napier teams while he's been there, and I'm waiting for that step forward, like everyone else in the country, feeling like okay, and it's just not there. And I think UCF is mad about getting embarrassed in their home stadium. I think they're going to go down. This is a regional rivalry. They're finally a P4 team, right? UCF has been little brother for their entire existence, and they want to make a statement here against a Florida team who I just don't think is that good. I think UCF actually has more talent on the field, which you can't say very often, and Florida, for whatever reason, can't put it together. So I have a lot of confidence in UCF, which means I'm probably going to be wrong on that one.
I had a lot of confidence in them having Colorado at home, and man, I don't know if you saw the post they did with kind of the Colorado players standing in the swamp there, while they're amidst a hurricane, it was kind of flooded, and I don't know. So they were getting a lot of pushback from that. And then Prime was talking about, man, these are the most recruits UCF has ever had because they're, at a game because they're coming to watch us. And, and he recruits heavily out of Florida. And so there's just all this talk. And I was like, oh man, Colorado's going to get embarrassed. And it was the other way around. So yeah, I think UCF, if they want to show that they are, and a lot of people are saying, why is UCF not ranked this week? Well, and then they went and did that against Colorado. It showed maybe, they didn't deserve to. So if this week they want to be taken seriously, it doesn't impact the conference standings, but they, always being called little brother against these guys, this is their chance to come in and say, hey, we know you're Florida, but we're better than you. And so I think that if they don't, then it really makes me question. I was like, maybe this team isn't who we thought they were.
I agree. So, I agree.
I I forgot that I picked Kansas there.
I'm waiting for your explanation on that one, Trevor. I did. So when I looked at this game, I thought, every year in the Big 12, there's these random games where you're like, oh, they should never win that, and they just do. And I almost went the same way of just randomly throwing darts at like, well, I'm going to pick an upset, and I'm like, I'm never good at those. Arizona State's got the momentum. They need this game. Kansas cannot figure out up from down, and Arizona State's a little upstart. I don't think they're quite as good as we thought early on. But I think they're good. They've taken a legitimate step forward, so I'm comfortable with that Arizona State pick. But I'd love to hear your Kansas State or your Kansas defense on this.
Well, let me pull up here because let's see, because they have not. So they obviously haven't won very many games, but they've been in all of these games and they've been competitive. Now it hasn't been the toughest talent. You have Illinois, who I believe is still ranked, and that was a close one. UNLV has been stellar. I mean, against
Lights
lesser
out.
competition. But even
UNLV is impressive. They are a legitimate team this year. I will tune in for the first time in a long time to the Mountain West Conference Championship if it's UNLV against Boise State, because that would be fun to watch.
Absolutely. Now, are they worth paying? What is it, like 50% of the the TV revenue or whatever Mountain West did to keep them? I don't think so, but certainly looks like a good move that they kept him now. West Virginia, again, it was at West Virginia. Both teams kind of struggling, but West Virginia is a solid team, and so that was a close game. TCU, who really knows? But I don't know. Kansas has been in these games. It's just a matter of time for them to put it together. Arizona has been surprising this year, or sorry, ASU. But that the Mississippi State team that they beat is, has started to look like, okay, maybe that wasn't as impressive.
Yeah.
And
well, Texas State's good, but not incredible, right? They just lost to Sam Houston State,
right? And so that was
they were in a tight game. So
so it just felt like at some point Kansas is going to win another game, and it's going to take people off guard. And I think ASU people are really high on them and think, oh yeah, this is really cool. This team's turned it around. I don't think they fully turned the corner. They're kind of like Cincy, where I feel like they're still maybe another year away from really putting it together and being more competitive. At some point, Kansas is going to win another game. And so I just felt like this might be one that they come out and shock us and pull out probably another close one. But
I like it. Good analysis, Trevor.
That's beyond. It's more feeling like I don't really know. I don't know. I don't feel great about it, but I feel like there's surprises every week. And I feel like, why not Kansas? Why not?
Yep. Why not?
And then
I'm going to say, why not Texas Tech? Right?
This is another one I sat on for a long time. I don't know. Like, I feel good about Texas Tech going against this, but I think, and they could either catch Arizona coming in off of a high of saying, oh yeah, we just beat Utah in Salt Lake, and Tech could come in and show them what's up. But I think, this team showed that maybe they have the potential to be the team that people thought they might be before the season. After that last game. So I don't know. I could see this game going either way. Why'd you go with Texas Tech?
I'm starting to drink the Texas Tech Kool-Aid. I am. I look back and they got walloped by a very good Washington State team week one. It's week one. Washington State caught everybody off guard with how good they are this year. And then I think they were still reeling from that and barely pulled off a victory against an FCS school to avoid complete disaster to start their season, but then started to turn it around a bit. And that offense is really, really good. Go on the road and beat Cincy. I'm sorry, they took them at home and beat Cincy. But right, their defense struggles a lot. I expect this to be an extremely high scoring game. This is a Big 12 game from the early 2000s or 2010s where everybody was scoring 50 plus 60 points a game. I see this game going that way, where there's going to be a lot of points scored. And I feel like Texas Tech has been in those tough, close games enough to pull this out in the end against Arizona, where I don't think Arizona has. They've been blown out, or they've won fairly comfortably, and I think that experience comes in to help Texas Tech steal one on the road.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. It does feel like this has all the makings of a shootout, and I believe in Morton or Fafita, and I don't know. It really could be. I thought actually after Tech had that bounce back win and then they beat ASU, I kind of thought they might be like OSU was last year. They'd have high highs and low lows and kind of swing throughout the season, and you never know who they were, but they really do seem to be settling in. So I think that's a great pick, and it's definitely a game I want to watch because I think it's going to be an entertaining one.
Yeah, it'll be a fun one.
So, okay, so that's this week. A little bit, only 6 games, Big 12, and one of them out of conference. A lot of buys now, teams getting rest.
Yeah.
So, but it's still some good football, and we can watch rest easy, knowing that BYU is at home, healing up, and
Undefeated.
watching general conference. So being resting up physically as well as spiritually, I guess.
That's right. That's right.
So,
Be a good weekend.
Right. So anyway, that bye week is really coming at a good time, and I like BYU. At this point, obviously exceeding expectations. Now being able to get some rest, get some guys back, and being a little bit more, being able to continue playing complementary football and being solid on both sides of the ball. So, what do you look forward to most this weekend?
This weekend,
Yeah.
football wise, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, in terms of football, yeah. I mean, I guess you could go anywhere with that.
I'll go anywhere with that, but no, I like. There's a pretty good slate of games out there, but as far as Big 12 is concerned, that last one we talked about, Texas Tech, Arizona, is a big one in the UCF Florida game, because I feel like UCF needs to make a statement for the Big 12. We're not getting a lot of love in the rankings. All the Big 12 teams are down, including the 2 undefeated teams, Iowa State and BYU, are much lower than ACC, SEC, Big Ten. I mean, they're dominating. So we've got to start winning these matchups against the SEC and the Big Ten when we have a shot. And Kansas State didn't beat Illinois early in the year, and so I want to see UCF make a statement there.
I'm glad you said that. The Utah loss for the Big 12 was bad for the Big 12 as a conference, and just like Miami beating Tech was great for the ACC. So that's a bad part. I mean, I couldn't help but be happy about it, even though I know you're saying no, you want to see both teams undefeated going into the Holy War. I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if Utah has at least a loss before that game anyway. So I don't mind seeing Utah lose. But yeah, the Big 12 is that, which is crazy because when you look at across, and I'll have some for next time, I'll have some queued up, but these metrics that compare conferences and things, like the Big 12 is right there, and it's usually closer to the Big 10 than the Big 10 is close to the SEC. So, and then, ACC after that. And so now these two conferences, the SEC and Big 10, wanting to get 4, expand the playoff and have 4 automatic bids. It's like, look, if you think you're that good, why are we doing any automatic bids outside of conference champions? It's just to get the best teams in there, which is the point of the playoff, not to lock in 4 SEC schools. Like, you guys play each other. That's why you have conference games. In fact, I'm for having conference champions, like having Power 5 and Group of 5. I was going to say FCS, and whatever. Just get the conference champions in there. Like, make the conferences relevant and make those games important, which is hard to do when conferences are so big. But that's why conferences should never have expanded so large. So teams play each other. You get the best team from each conference, and then they play in a playoff, and then you can name the winner. I think that's a system that makes the most sense. It'll never happen because there's too much money on the line, and certain conferences have all the power, hold all the chips.
It is. SEC and Big Ten hold all the chips right now, and they've put themselves in a position to do that. And I think it's unfortunate for college football. It's unfortunate for the rest of us who are not SEC, Big Ten. And I don't know that it would ever go exclusive. I know people talk about setting up tiers, and there's going to be this top tier between SEC and Big Ten, and then everybody else, no one else is going to have access. I don't see it ever going that way. I think there's too many other invested schools in this, but they're going to continue to press, and the only way to really stop that tide is on the field. You have to win those games. You have to go out there and beat those big time schools to prove that your conference and your team belongs. I've seen a lot of scheduling news from BYU lately, but we don't have an SEC or Big Ten school scheduled. And I hope that changes in the near future, because you want to go and play those teams. You want to go and match up against those conferences. So,
and it's going to be harder with the SEC. Everyone calls them out for playing cupcake schedule. You only play 8 conference games, and then you say you're the best, which is true. But I've always thought this in the back of my mind. It's like, yeah, you guys play weak schedule, but if they go to more conference games, that's fewer out of conference games they have to play
That's
us.
correct.
That means less inventory for the rest of us to get in there to play against them and to
Exactly.
show our hand. And yeah, losing. Didn't we have a game with Ole Miss or something that
We
was
did. Yeah, we had a home and away with Ole Miss that we lost, and those are the types you need. You need to hang out of those games to be able to move the Big 12 forward.
So if we're not playing them in conference, that means those playoff games we have to win, and we might only be getting one team from our conference in there. We'd be lucky if we get two, and so that means our teams have to go in there and then win those games when we go up against them, to kind of put our money where our mouth is. And so anyway, this is a whole nother conversation. This is a whole nother video, and here it is tacked in at the end of this one. So we'll get into that more some other time. But yeah, it's incredibly frustrating to see the way this sport is going. With a lot of the changes that are like so close to what we wanted for so long. We wanted to play up, but the way that it's being handled, it makes you think, it's kind of defeating the whole purpose, especially if we start locking in conference spots and everything, and you're getting teams that may not be the most deserving. So anyway, perfect. So didn't say this at the top of the video, but please, if you haven't already, give this video a like, subscribe to the channel. We do content. We continue to do these recaps each week, make our picks. Also getting guests on. We won't have one this week with the bye week, but next week we're lined up with some friends of ours from the College Huddle to talk about Arizona and get a little bit of insight into their team and how that matchup might be. And then also after the games, we will do our live reaction, come on and chat and kind of discuss the game, your thoughts and everything. Hopefully we can celebrate victories together. Otherwise we can all get on and vent. Either way, look out for those. So be sure to like and subscribe, hit the bell, do all the things. And as always, Adam, go Cougs.
Go Cougs.